Welcome back, seventh graders. This is 1.2, example 2, and now we're going to add a positive and a negative number. And how do we do that? There's different ways. Some of us might think of it other ways than others, but I like to, with 5 plus negative 10, I like to just do 5 minus 10, and I'm pretty good with the number line, but there's another way to do it with the absolute values, and here's how you do it. So you take the absolute value of negative 10, and since that's greater than 5, the absolute value of 5, you're going to subtract 5 from the absolute value of negative 10, which is 5. So you have 10 minus 5, and you end up with 5. But now you need to use the sign of the larger number, which is negative. So the sum is negative 5. If you use a number line, you can start at 5 and then go 10 spaces to the left, and you'll end up at negative 5. So if this is confusing for you, taking the absolute values, you can always just use the number line, or you can say 5 minus 10, negative 5. Totally up to you how you do it, but either way it will work. So if we want to do negative 3 plus 7, what do? Well, we're going to take the absolute value of 7 and the absolute value of negative 3. Since the absolute value of 7 is greater, we're going to subtract negative 3 from 7. So that's going to be 7 minus 3, which is 4. And we're going to use the sign of 7, which is positive. So if you use a number line, you can start at negative 3 and count 7 to the right, and you'll end up at 4. Or you might just be able to see that negative 3 plus 7 is 4. Totally up to you how you do it. But the absolute values of both, you can subtract the smaller one from the bigger one, and then keep the sign of the bigger one. Okay? Now, here we have negative 12 plus 12. So these are opposites, right? Additive inverses. So the sum is 0 because of the additive inverse property. If you have negative 12 and then you add 12, you're going to end up at 0. So if you owe me 12 bucks, you pay me 12 bucks, now you have 0. Okay? So questions on those, bring them to the Google Meets. Let's watch another video and see how they do
Add
it.
negative 11
These are
plus
3
6.
more problems, and we'll
Notice
watch
that
their
we have a
tutorial
negative
here.
number and a positive number. So we are adding integers with different signs. To do this, we subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. Then use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So we have negative 11 plus 6. Now our first step will be finding the absolute value of both numbers. So the absolute value of negative 11 is equal to 11. And then we have the absolute value of 6, which is equal to 6. So then we subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater. So 6 is less than 11, so you subtract 6 from 11. 11 minus 6 is 5. So 5 is part of our answer. Then we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So 11 is greater than 6, and in our problem, 11 is negative. So we add a negative sign to our answer. So negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5. Let's try another example. We have 12 plus negative 5. Notice again they have different signs. One is positive, one is negative. So what we need to do is find the absolute value of both numbers. So the absolute value of 12 is equal to 12, and the absolute value of negative 5 is equal to 5. Now we subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. 5 is less than 12, so we subtract 5 from 12. 12 minus 5 is equal to 7. So we know that part of our answer is 7. Then we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So 12 is greater than 5, and in our problem, 12 is positive. So our answer is positive 7. So 12 plus negative 5 is equal to 7. Let's try one more. We have 4 plus negative 4. Now notice one's positive, one's negative, but we have both of them as 4. This is a special case. We can use the additive inverse property. This says that the sum of an integer and its additive inverse or opposite is 0. So the opposite is two numbers that are the same distance from 0 but on opposite sides of 0. So 4 and negative 4 are both the same distance from 0, but they're on opposite sides of 0. So you can imagine a number line. Since the property says that if it's an integer and its additive inverse or opposite, then the sum is 0. So we can say that 4 plus negative 4 is equal to 0.
All right, there you have it. We want to make sure you have these written down because those are super important.